Miatta, let me start with you because on that point that Vicky just finished with there, why is there an amendment down for the Monday, for the 9th?
Well, that's a good question. So we're wrangling about the date, whether it's the 9th or the 12th. I think for those that are sort of pushing for the 9th, in part they're sort of arguing that actually the student vote is a really important component of this. Students break up from university, and so actually it's much better to do it whilst they're in their home campuses. I mean, the original logic behind the 9th was the fact that actually some of the opposition parties were worried it would give the government enough time to try and ram through, Boris Johnson's withdrawal agreement bill. Now, he said he's not going to do that, so you kind of wonder why we're quibbling over a matter of 3 days.
Fun and games also on the Labour backbenches today. I saw a report earlier in the day that the whips were going to whip against the vote, even though the leadership said they wanted the election.
Yeah, I mean, look, so clearly Labour have been divided on this question. And to be fair to the MPs that are saying this is not the time for a general election, their argument is Brexit remains unresolved. A general election is not the way that you solve Brexit, because actually the only way you resolve the question of Brexit is to take it back to the people and have a referendum on that specific issue. And lots of issues come into play in the general election. It's really, really messy. So they're like, let's deal with Brexit and then talk about the election. But I think that as soon as that coalition between the Lib Dems, Labour and SNP broke down, and the Lib Dems and SNP were clearly going to vote for this bill, it became untenable, I think, for the leadership not to come behind it. Because you go into an election seeming like you were dragged into it rather than being front-facing and being well up for it.
The manifestos in 2017 actually looked quite similar when it came to Brexit, but this time they're going to look very different.
Yes, they are. I mean, and I think for Labour, they're going to try and sell their argument, which is, the way that we get through Brexit is to have a credible version of leaving that doesn't tank the economy and remain, and then we leave it to the British public to decide the right course of action. But I think the key thing for Labour is they're not going to want to fight this election on Brexit. They're going to want it to be about the big issues that, quite frankly, the public are desperate to talk about. The economy not working for everyone, the housing crisis, the climate emergency, all big issues. And actually, it would be an absolute shame.
But does any of that get solved if you don't solve Brexit? Because we've seen the stasis this time in the Parliament. You've got to solve the big issue first, haven't you?
Well, yes and no, but I would argue that the general election doesn't start to solve Brexit. And in the end, we will have a general election and we're still going to be wrangling about the future relationship. And at the end of the day, the country can't afford another 3 years of what we've had in the last 3 years, where all the big issues that in the end, that's what voters care about, have been put to one side. So I think this election, in the end, won't just be about Brexit, and it can't just be about Brexit because the stakes are far too high.